kind of reshuffling in the economy. The next topic we're going to focus on is organizing your next job search. And then, as always, we'll have an Ask the Recruiter element, and I'll be answering questions. And if I see any pop up in the chat room, I'll use those. And we've already had some that have come in to our team. So let's talk about layoff by the numbers. First of all, the industry is absolutely getting hammered. The tech industry is. This is probably the biggest bloodbath I've seen since 1990, the late 1990s, I think around 98, when the dot-com bubble hemorrhaged. I don't think it burst, it hemorrhaged. And it's been really remarkable. People saw this coming. It's interesting. I talk with tech people all the time, and a lot of the younger people who've never experienced this type of economic upheaval, really had trouble understanding what it meant for them. Well, I'm not going to have any trouble finding a job because I've always been very fortunate and been able to find a job without any trouble. So I think I've got this. Well, I hope that you do okay, but I think this is more significant than you've experienced in the past. Meta, the company formerly known as Facebook, and Twitter have axed more than 18,000 workers this week alone. Other sectors will follow as the economy slows. You'll know that the layoff is really completing its cycle when you start seeing layoffs in healthcare. That industry is usually one of the last to follow. Places like hospitality and leisure travel, you'll see declines in those earlier in the cycle. Healthcare is usually the last industry that's impacted historically. Now, it could be different this time, mainly because when people lose their jobs, if they don't have a lot of reserves, they can't afford the COBRA payments, and so they'll start losing benefit coverage, or they will start buying coverage that is not as good as the group policy they had, and so they will have to then be very careful and judicious about using that information. So I think the other sectors are going to follow us down in healthcare. And I think that that's unfortunate, but it's the nature of the beast. It's just the nature of the beast. And it happens periodically. The total layoff impact is going to be hard to predict, but today it is approaching about 50,000 people this year alone. So that is something that you really need to kind of focus on, it's going to affect a lot of different people. Now, the best advice I can offer, sorry for the distractions, some of the live feeds are just coming through. The best thing to do is hope for the best, but be prepared. Hope for the best, but be prepared. And that's something that, we can help you do. Now, these great words of wisdom, I think it's really important for you to lock in on this. If you haven't looked for a job in 3 to 5 years, the job market has changed dramatically. And if you're not used to the new rules, you will struggle. There are plenty of people out there that can help you. JohnGSelf.com, Guiding Your Career. We have a lot of online affordable programs to help you understand the resume requirements today, what to do. We have a free course, What to Do If You Lose Your Job. So, but this mindset is even more important. Once you get past the shock of being laid off and you start looking at the actual job of finding a job, don't expect to be motivated every day. That's just, you would like to say, I'm going to get charged up and I'm really going to do the best I can to get a job as quickly as I can so that I don't have to dig into my savings. But you're not going to be motivated every day. Don't count on motivation every day. You must count on discipline every day. If you don't take anything else away from this session, it's this: finding a job is a full-time job, and it requires a lot of discipline and a lot of organization. Well, the first thing I want you to do is, this is free. It doesn't cost you anything. Visit our website, johngself.com. Click the little button, red button on the right side of the page, and take the free course on steps to take if you're out, if your job is cut. It's got a lot of good information. If you haven't gone through this in recent years, it'll give you sort of a refresher course on things that you should be mindful of. I think after you get through the initial shock, don't panic. Now, I know a lot of us live hand to mouth, check to check, and especially when you're starting a new company, and that it can be very, very scary to lose your job. Everything's great as long as you got that paycheck coming in, but someday it stops. You may get a 90-day payment. You may get a 6-month severance. For those of you who've been around with companies a long time, they may pay you up to a year, but that's not always that common. You will feel the economic pressure, but don't panic. Take some time, as much as you can afford to take, to process. If you've been with a company 4 or 5 years or longer, and you suddenly get called in and told that you don't have a job anymore, and that you're cut off from your cell phone, you're cut off from your company cell phone, your company laptop access to all the programs, that is shocking. And we all think about that in our minds sometime, about what it's like to lose our job. But when it happens, it's shocking. And it's really something akin to losing somebody you love. There's a grief process. So one of the things we talk about and what steps to take is, you're going to have to go through this grief process. Don't jump into the market before you've really sort of processed it. You can't be angry when you start interviewing for a new job. You can't be insecure. You've got to be ready, and you've got to have a positive outlook. So take some time to get ready. I think one of the biggest problems that I can tell you from my experience in executive search for 27 years on a global basis is that a lot of applicants show up and they are underprepared or unprepared. And one of the biggest building blocks that they haven't taken care of is understanding their value. Now, people say, oh, yeah, well, I'm good. I do this really well. I'm a good coder. What value do you bring to the company? There are a lot of good coders. There are a lot of good software engineers. There are a lot of good architects. There are a lot of good salespeople. What makes you unique? So really take the time to understand your value. Make a list of your strengths, your signature strengths. You'll start with a list that may be 15 to 20 items long, and then start documenting on the right side of the page what elements, what successes have you enjoyed that will support each one of those strengths that you've outlined. Get it down to 4 or 5, and then write a 250-word statement that this is who I am, and this is my value. And this statement is going to be a statement that you will use over and over again, not in its entirety, but when somebody says, Margaret, why should we hire you? Or Margaret, tell us a little bit about yourself. You're going to be drawing on your value brand statement. So you need to first and foremost, you need to understand your value. This will be critical to your search. Second, establish your home or office, your job search central. Finding a job is a full-time job. So please take the steps necessary to do this. And establish some parameters. Some of you have roommates, some of you have a spouse or a partner. And if you have families, you've got to set parameters for finding a job. It is a full-time job, and there are going to be times that you have to be on the telephone, or there are going to be times when you're going to be doing live chats, video chats, video interviews. And it's really not a good idea to have people coming through the room, making a lot of noise, being disrespectful of the focus that you need to have for your job. So if you're a parent and you just need to establish house rules, daddy or mommy has to look for a job, and this is my office, and you have to respect my privacy while I'm on the phone. I'll let the doors close. Don't come banging through. Don't go pounding on the door. Knock gently. If I don't respond, give me some time to finish up the interview. I can't tell you how many times I've done interviews where kids have bounded into the rooms. We saw that once on national TV on a major news network. I've done interviews where kids have run into the room and been disruptive or made a lot of noise. Barking dogs have bounded into the room. You've got to have some rules. You've got to set some parameters. Okay, I won't get to spend too much more time on that, but it can be distracting, and it can detract from your brand of professionalism. Now, we talked about discipline in that first quote. You have to establish a daily routine. It's really, really important. You have to have a schedule. In the morning, I like to do my reads. You have to stay abreast of the industry. Even though you've lost your job, you can't fall, you can't lose touch. You've got to know what's happening. It's helpful to know who else is laying off, because that's the competitors you're going to be fighting with to get a new job. You've got to think about, look for networking contacts. Stay caught up on your emails and telephone calls. You need to spend time engaging with people on LinkedIn and other social media sites that are business oriented. Do not waste your time chatting with your friends about what you're going to do for the weekend. This is a job. And if you don't take it seriously, and if you are not disciplined, the process of finding the job will take a lot longer. And the research shows when you're not disciplined, you're not focused, you don't understand your value, you're not going to do as well financially. So be sure that you block out time every day. Now, Friday afternoons, if you need a break, understandable. That's usually an off day and not a great day to do a lot of job searching, but it is a time to get caught up. And it is a time to engage with people on LinkedIn. We'll talk about more LinkedIn in just a few minutes, because there's some major changes that are occurring there. Step 4, finalize your resume. Now, big important statement. If you haven't been in the job market for 4 or 5 years, the whole focus of the resume has changed. First of all, you cannot do one resume and send it to every applicant, the same resume. You will get rejected so many times you won't be able to see straight. You have to customize for each job from your professional summary at the top of the resume all the way through. If you're just putting in keywords from the job search summary and the words they're using and the issues they're addressing, and you only put it in the summary, the scanners a lot of times view that as a keyword dump, and you will not scan as well. You won't rate as highly on the scan score. And getting a high scan score is the difference between advancing in the search and getting kicked out. Okay, so you need to customize your resume. We have a form. We'll be happy to share it with you at info@johngself.com. And you can download the form. And it basically allows you to go through the job summary, go through the job summary and collect all what you think are the keywords and key phrases and what they're looking for, so you can be sure that you are addressing those elements throughout your resume. That is really, really important. So you want to get a good resume format that's easily adaptable. You need to be able to change it. Don't use multiple columns. Don't use a lot of color. Don't use pictures. Anything that's going to trip up the scanner. The scanner is going to read just like anything else, left or right, and it doesn't care about length, but what it cares about is content. It doesn't even care what your resume looks like. Matter of fact, if you're going to be safe with your resume, submit a plain text resume. But be sure that the resume addresses that job. When you get ready to hit the button to send it in, you got to ask yourself, does this resume adequately sell my value for this specific job? Am I addressing what they want? Don't assume that they're going to read your resume and sort it all out if it's not specifically referenced in the resume. So, be direct, sell your value. That, the resume used to be your first interview. Well, with new automation coming along, we're going to talk about in just a minute, that is no longer going to be the case. But you still need a resume that sells your value and that is very specific to the job you are applying for. That means that every time you apply for a job, you're going to have to revise the resume. Bad news for those of you who don't like to touch the resume. I can't tell you how many times I get proposals each week for saying, would you do my resume? I'll pay you $750, $800. I will advise you on a resume. I will show you how to build your resume, but I will not do the resume for you. And the reason I want is because I won't do that is because you have to do it yourself. You can't just call on a resume writer and assume that one resume they're going to present to you is going to be the same resume you can use for every job and that you'll be able to get a job pretty quickly. Wrong. And don't believe any malarkey they share with you about that because it's just not up to date anymore. Resume writers can help you put together a good first draft of a resume. And when I say a draft, a good version. It's not a final version because you have to modify it, customize it for every job. But they can help you draw out your signature strengths. They can help you, do some very, very good wording that will have impact. In the old days, how you designed your resume was really important. Now the resume scanner doesn't care. So don't pay for a lot of design. Pay for the content. Okay. If you're going to hire a resume writer, pay for the content. But you have to learn how to do this yourself. You're going to have to do this from the rest of your career. So don't just dump it off on somebody else and not have to worry about it. It's going to cost you a lot of money and you're still going to have to customize. Step 5, update and enhance your LinkedIn profile. This is now critical. Why? Because major corporations are beginning to use the same technology they use to scan your resume, the applicant tracking system that many people refer to as applicant tossing systems. And they are now beginning to use this as a candidate sourcing tool, automation and sourcing. That means that the recruiters their job is going to begin changing even more. And they now have programs that can scan thousands of LinkedIn profiles in a matter of minutes and come up with the best 200 for a specific job, or the best 150, whatever they set the parameters, however they design the algorithm. This means that your LinkedIn profile must be up to date and it must be value oriented. It must talk about your experience and the value you have brought to each employer. Your about section must be in first person and it must sell your value. Now, if you're uncomfortable with selling yourself, you're in for a tough slog. You're in for a tough slog because you have to sell yourself in your resume and you have to sell yourself on your LinkedIn profile. Get a really good picture, not something that looks like a DUI mugshot, okay? I see a lot of those. Get rid of that. Get a good picture. Even if you have to spend a little money for a photographer, get something with a smiling face that really captures your personality, because the LinkedIn profiles with good pictures tend to get noticed more by recruiters that are still doing manual reviews. Again, now the automated sourcing is still not very widespread, but it's going to be. So get in the habit of building up a strong LinkedIn profile because that is going to become your first interview in the future. Step 6, recruit a reference panel. Okay, it's really important to if you're an executive, it's going to take you 6 to 8 months, maybe longer, to find a new job. Okay, I know it sounds long, but that when it all materializes, that's how long it's probably going to take. That's the average. With all of the market, if you're in tech, with all the people in the market looking for new work, it means it's going to take a little bit longer and it's going to be more competitive. So you have to be better prepared. One way you can get better prepared is to recruit references and then interview them to say, would you mind sharing with me? This has been a big shock to me. And so I want to make this a really positive learning experience. I want you to tell me what you think I need to do to be a stronger job applicant. I want you to tell me what you think my strengths are. I want you to tell me what you think my weaknesses are. I want you to tell me, the things that I did you really liked and the things that I did you wish I wouldn't do. This is all information to help you be more self-aware, but it's also information that will help you prepare possible answers for job interviews, because you are going to be asked, what are your weaknesses? Okay? And do not say, oh, I work too much, because that is just nonsense. It's a dumb answer, and it'll probably get you eliminated in a competitive market. So think about, okay, I do have weaknesses. We all have weaknesses. say, well, I have been told this, this, and this, but let me tell you what I'm doing to really move forward and not let those be a problem anymore. Um, and, so take it and pivot. Take your weaknesses and pivot and make them a positive answer. Talk about what you've done to improve yourself and talk about things that you've changed. Sometimes your weaknesses are your strengths. I'm very good verbally, but that's also a weakness. And so I always use the line that my father once said that I could chat up a brick wall. I'm really conscious of that as I've grown and other people have worked with me. And now I think I do a much better job with that. But it's something that I ask people that work with me to kind of constantly remind me that I need to be more focused in my verbal communication. Okay, that shows the employer that you do have a weakness, because everybody has a weakness, and it shows the employer self-awareness, and it shows the employer that yes, you're aware of it and you're taking steps. That's the kind of employee they want to hire. Okay. Now, another thing that you need to do is set up job alerts. If you have a professional association, one that I'm very familiar with is the American College of Healthcare Executives, and you can post your resume and set parameters for jobs that you would like to look for, so that you will be notified when a job that meets your criteria comes up. You can do it on a lot of other job boards. And if you are looking for intelligence, if you're a senior executive and you're looking for people who are, say, leaving an opportunity, say at a chamber of commerce or a school superintendent, or jobs that sometimes have a lot of turnover, small hospital CEOs. You can create alerts on Google that will tell you when those jobs are coming available. And being first in the door is an important thing to do. So you need to check that on a regular basis and be sure that you're getting good job alerts, and be sure that you're looking at that on a regular basis, and know what you want to do. Don't apply for stuff that you're not qualified for. Target your search to do those things that play to your strengths. Step 8, you need to be able to talk about why you were laid off. Now, if you're coming out of Meta, just all you have to do is just say, the CEO spent a lot of money on a new direction for the company. He admits that he made the bad made a bad strategy decision, and I am part of the fallout. And this is part of business. It's part of life, and I'm looking forward to moving on. But you want to have an exit statement. If you made a mistake in your job, and in that you were terminated because you made a mistake, you need to have a carefully worded statement. You don't want to throw yourself out there and look really bad. You want to admit that there was an issue and that this is the lesson learned. Or if there was a dispute between you and your boss, you do not want to badmouth anybody. You want to come forward with a statement that there was an issue where we could not come to an agreement. And, I really felt it was a good idea for me to move on. And we mutually agreed. And I learned a lot. I hold my boss in high regard. And, I'm glad I had the opportunity to learn and work there. And now I'm looking forward to my future now. And if you've had a stable work career, then that's not going to be a big issue. But if you stumble, mumble, and fumble, it's only going to sound worse than it needs to sound. And don't go to an interview unless you have your exit statement prepared. So, you want to put a positive spin if it was something bad, and if it was part of the layoff bloodbath that's happening in tech and that's going to happen in other industries before long, just be sure that they had to make some decisions. They were tough calls. I'm sorry that I was one of those people, because I enjoyed my work, I enjoyed my colleagues, and I'm looking forward to the future. I think I've learned a lot from this experience, and will be applying that. And if they say, "What have you learned?" You talk about, to be perfectly honest, sometimes the people who get laid off were the people who didn't have strong political ties in the company, that they had just done their job and they thought that doing a good job was enough to keep their job. And it's not always. You've got to build up internal networks in the organization. but you need to have your exit statement for whatever reason, and it needs to be very tightly worded. And sometimes, as my Canadian wife likes to say, John, less is more. Now, a lot of people are very embarrassed when they get laid off. Been there, done that, got a t-shirt. But let me tell you, I'm going to give you some counterintuitive advice today. Hopefully you have a network that you've built up and that you communicate with periodically on email. You need to send your network an email that says, that we're going through some tough, challenging times in the economy. And regrettably, I was one of the 11,000 people at Meta, or I was one of the 7,000 people at Twitter, or I was one of the 700 people at this or that company that that they eliminated my job, which is a good way to say it. They eliminated my job for economic reasons. And you say, I really learned a lot, be very quickly pivot and start being positive and upbeat. I'm going to take a few days to kind of think about my experience and process the lessons learned. And then I'm going to be in the job market. And I will be following up with you in the near future to let you know what my targets are and what the kinds of positions I'd be available for, I'd be interested in pursuing. And I will hope that if you see something that fits with what I'm looking for, that you wouldn't mind sharing that with me. Okay. Now you got to share that network. And every so often, not every month, but every couple of months or every 3 months, you need to send out, let me bring you an update on where my job search is. I've interviewed a couple of times that weren't the right fit, but I'm very optimistic. I'm learning a lot. This is a great experience. And although I wish I didn't have to go through it, I'm learning so much, and I'm very, very grateful for all the support and advice that I'm getting. Thank you to those of you who have been helpful. So you want to send out regular emails. Now, let's get back to LinkedIn, because that's your first interview. Recruiters, 90+% of the corporate recruiters are on LinkedIn every week. And so this is your opportunity to attract attention. And you want to post original content. You want to post industry stories that are about your industry. You want to, if there's interesting stories about LinkedIn, about layoffs, you want to post those. You want to post interesting things about innovations that other companies are doing. And when you go through that process, be sure you add your personal comments. Think carefully about what you want to put, because that's going to play in to how recruiters and how job sourcing computers will be evaluating you. So you've got to be visible, and you have to post. There is a place in if you're going to post on a regular basis and you enjoy doing that, turn on the creator tab, because that could help you get more exposure. Be sure that your headline is more than just your job title. Talk about what you are: a successful, innovative executive with a great track record. Don't write it so long that it becomes truncated. You want your full headline to be visible on all of your posts. Then skip a couple of spaces and put in some of those skill set terms that you would used to use at the top of your resume, where the professional profile is now. And networking 3.0 strategist, system architect, things that would attract a scanner, and things that a recruiter could easily see when you're scanning your LinkedIn profile. The first time through, they're just going to be looking quickly. If they like you, they're going to take a note of the profile and come back and revisit it in greater length, just like they would a resume. So that's something that you need to consider. So post 3 or 4 times a week. Be sure you have a good photo. Be sure you have a good headline. Visit my LinkedIn profile to see what I've done. And I seek professional advice time to time as well. At the top, use a big banner at the top that says what you do. I mean, don't put a sunset. My God, some recruiter may see a sunset picture. It may be a beautiful photo, but they may think, what is this person telling me about where they are in their career? Or what are they telling me about their commitment? Do something, put a picture up there that is really reflective of who you are and and then put a headline, that really sells your value. Okay. Now, this is where people really get kind of pissy at me. I tell my clients you got to spend 5 to 6 hours a day in job search activities. Now, if you're doing a career, what we call a slow career change, you have a day job and your process is to slowly, move so that you can change careers because you're not happy where you are. That can be a more prolonged practice and does not require as much intensity. But if you're out of work, this is what it takes. Okay. Sorry to be the bearer of bad news, but if you're not spending 5 or 6 hours a day in your job search, then you're violating the basic tenet of finding another job, which is finding a job is a full-time job. And that doesn't, you wouldn't tell your boss you're only going to spend 2 hours a day on your day job, would you? You probably wouldn't last very long. Well, you've got to treat your job search with the same discipline and the same focus and the same dedication. So that's what you have to do at least 4 days a week. Again, you can work Friday morning, Friday afternoon, you can get caught up or you can take some time. There's a lot of rejection in job search. And yes, you need time to decompress. And maybe you take a Wednesday afternoon off. But if you do, you've got to be sure you catch up on the work. You can't, it's like anything else. Your regular job, if you take some time off, you got to get caught up. So if you need some decompression time or you get a big setback and it really, really knocks you for a loop, take a few minutes, take an afternoon to get over it, but you got to come back and be disciplined and focused and dedicated to getting back up on that horse that bucked you off. You got to get back. Okay. You need to rely on your support network. Finding a job is like building a company. It can be an exciting, invigorating, depressing, crushing event. There's a lot of rejection, and you may get rejected 8, 10, 15, 20 times. It only takes one. It only takes one yes to get back into the game. If you're on the sidelines, you got to do everything possible to get back in the game as quickly as possible. Don't take a job that's beneath you. Don't screw up your career progression because you're panicky. Don't do that. Set your standards, set your goals, and don't deviate. Now, if it gets prolonged and you have to be more practical, great. Call me, set up a call. We'll talk it through and I'll give you my best advice. But don't settle. Don't settle. Okay? That's really important. Now, the next thing you have to be careful about is when you go through a layoff, even if you were badly treated and it was a crushing blow and your spouse or your partner, your roommates, your friend, everybody was incredible to you. They hugged you. They gave you a lot of love and they told you they were really going to be with you. But let me tell you something. 4 months into the process, and if you're venting about how frustrated you are, there's only so much a spouse can take. One of the things we do for our clients in our online on demand guiding your career curriculum is, I tell them, if your wife's tired or your husband's tired of hearing you, listening to you, call me. I'll help you get your stinger out of the dirt and you can dump on me because I've heard so much of it. I've been there. So I've learned this lesson the hard way. I had a former spouse scream at me once that she was sick and tired of listening to me, my hangdog, frustration, and that she was really losing respect for me. Wow, that was an eye-opening experience. So don't lay it all on them. You've got to maintain having your partnership or your marriage, your relationship. You got to protect that. You want their support. They need to understand what you're going through, but be careful. There can be too much sharing. If you need somebody else to hire a coach, or use a program like ours, where if you buy into our outplacement services, which $149 a month, you get access to me twice a month and a live webinar. And there's plenty of time for you to rant and rave. And even if you need extra time, I always will try to make time for my clients who need extra help or need some extra, sympathy or encouragement. That's really important. Finding a job means you're going to be working from home. Now, historically, when people had that transition from working in an office going home to find a job, it was really isolating, and a lot of people really struggled. Well, people have learned to work on their own more during the pandemic, but one of the things you must do when you're looking for a job is that you must stay in touch with people who are still employed. Try to have coffee periodically with people, spread it around, and build your network. But understand this: in building your network, your friends are probably not going to be the people that help you find your next better job. They may give you leads or tips, but you're still going to you're still going to have to spend time building your strategic networking 3.0, around companies that you've targeted that you'd like to work for, or that that people may be approaching you. If a recruiter approaches you, or somebody tells you about a company, or you get an email online that we'd like to look at your resume, you still have to customize your resume. Okay, it's still going to go through the computer, but and if it doesn't go to the computer, a lot of recruiters are still manually looking at it. But you still need to have your resume focus on the job that they're asking you to apply for. That's really, really important. So you got to do a lot of networking. You got to take care of your family network. Don't complain too much. You do that with your coach or somebody else that's willing to play that role. But you can't bring all your frustration, all your depression home and expect that not to take a toll. So just give that some thought. Okay. Don't give up. And don't get discouraged. Now, we've run over a little bit, so I'm going to take a few minutes to take some questions. And I was looking out to see if I had other questions have come in, and we're still working on the technology of using the various studio streaming process. So we'll continue to work that out. If you have questions, you can email me, info@johngself.com. info@johngself.com, and we'll be happy to answer your questions. But here's a few that have come in. Is it a problem if you apply to too many jobs? Don't apply to too many jobs with the same company. Okay. It damages your brand. Don't apply to jobs with a company that you're not qualified for, because you're not going to get picked up, more than likely. In the old days when people made manual decisions about which resumes they would review, there was a human factor. Well, the human factor is really diminished now. So the computer doesn't care. The computer doesn't understand the concept of something may work out. Okay. So you got to get a good scan score. And but you don't want to keep applying for jobs you're not qualified for. So you need to cast a broader net. Okay, but until you find a job, you need to keep looking for a job. That means you need to cast a broader net. Now, if you're in a smaller town and all the jobs that you would want in that town are not available, you have to understand that you and your partner, your spouse, may have to make a tough decision. Some people at the executive level have taken on interim jobs for a period of time until they could find a permanent gig. And sometimes those interim positions will materialize into a better, incredibly good permanent job. But that requires some commuting and time away from home. And I know some people just don't like that, but you have to do, in this economy, you're going to have to do some things you probably hadn't thought about. But no, you can't apply for too many jobs. You got to find a job, but just don't apply to too many at one company. Okay. That was a long answer for a short question. What tips can you tell me about when you realize that an interviewer is not interested in hiring you? Well, number one, if they cut the interview shorter than the scheduled time, all right? That's one tip. Number two is if they're looking away on their desk doing this, then they're losing their attention. And sometimes it's just a bad interviewer. Candidates come in unprepared and they're bad interviews, but people who do the interviews can be bad interviewers. So unless it's the hiring authority, don't get too discouraged. But if you're getting your interviews cut short, then that's a bad sign. if they talk about themselves more and talk about the job and don't ask you any questions, that's probably not a good sign. Now, please understand that a lot of people who are doing interviews have no training in doing interviews. Okay, I've interviewed thousands of people in my career, but a lot of people who do hiring don't have that much experience. So what you need to do sometimes is, if they're really struggling, is sometimes just keep telling your story, keep talking about things that you've done. That if they say something that triggers that, just say, I've done something similar in my career. Try to make, sometimes you just have to try to make a good situation out of bad. Okay, good question. How do you answer the work-life balance question? That's a great question. Okay, and here's what I would suggest. There is no. That's one of the big myths in business. Here's how I define it, and I get my answer from the great Gay Gaddis, who was a brilliant advertising executive who created a digital agency called T3 in Austin. And when I was running East Texas EMS, Gay Gaddis was our advertising person and helped me achieve great success with our first EMS membership program. And it was a phenomenal campaign, and she is a phenomenally creative person. But Gay wrote a book about her life growing up in Liberty, Texas, and it was about being a kick-ass cowgirl. And it's a great book. If you want to buy a neat book for your daughter who's going off to college, it's about how she has balanced her life as a mother and as a business owner. And she was an owner of one of the largest women-owned advertising agencies in the United States. So Gay's definition of this: if you're not happy at work, it's hard to be happy at home. If you're not happy at home, it's hard to be happy at work. There are times when your home life, because of family illness, is going to require more of your focus and more of your attention, and you need to be prepared to do that. And there are times that your company needs to be sensitive to that. If you're working for the wrong people. And there are times when your company is going to require extra effort and extra time, and your family needs to be sensitive to that. And you need to be sensitive to the fact that if you're a workaholic, how much of that extra time is producing that much more value in terms of income, job security, or future growth in the company? There are a lot of people that work like crazy and they never really grow in an organization. So, you need to really think about that very, very carefully. But that answer I just gave you is a great answer for a job interview. Okay, one last question. How should I prepare for the upcoming recession? Well, number one, and again, this is a free program, so we don't get anything out of this. Visit our website, johngself.com. Click the little button on the right side of the screen, and it says get access to our affordable courses or something along that line. And there's a course about applying. What do you do if you lose your job? It's free, and there's multiple video chapters there. And look around at some of the other offerings. And if you have any questions, email me at info@johngself.com. But I would also say that you need to have a plan. You need to boost your LinkedIn profile. You need to shift your networking strategy from a traditional model where you went to networking events and that was kind of booze and news and gossip, and go to networking 3.0. We talk about that in some of our writing and our daily video blogs. You need to consider using video emails to begin to differentiate yourself from the competition. And you need to keep trucking with us on Lunch and Learn. We'll try to keep updating you with ideas and strategies to expedite your job search. We've run a few minutes over. It's been 45 minutes, not 30. Thank you for joining us today. We hope that you'll join us next week, and we'll be publishing our topic Sunday or Monday. And we're continuing to master the technology of live stream. But thanks for joining us. Best wishes for a great weekend. If you haven't, one last thing, if you do not subscribe to Got a Minute, go to our webpage, John G. Self. At the top, click the subscribe button, and you'll get job tips and career strategies delivered in a video format, 60 seconds or less, Monday through Friday. And then Friday afternoon, we have our funny weekend quotes. So Thanks again. It's been a pleasure being with you, and I have enjoyed the time.